Which Cowboys wide receiver should be selected first in 2021? Which NFC East tight end is still being drafted as a bargain? And which second-year running back could benefit the most from a new coach? Plus, Alex, the prognosticator, Kaganowski, gives you the Super Bowl bets he likes best. The 2020 FFPC main event ninth-place finisher, Franco Vendome, shares how he almost got to the mountaintop of the contest. Draft Dogs creator Jimmy Wagner will swing in to talk about his fantasy football Kickstarter and much more. We've got a jam-packed, great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com, with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here's Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Rob, and thank you, Quiet Hollers. Remember to check out their music at quiethollers.com. Greetings, salutations, and happy Super Bowl week to all of the Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs listening around the world this evening or downloading this podcast at your convenience. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I am, of course, your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, and my co-host is not only the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott, but he is extremely excited because it's Super Bowl week, Farrell.
Finest week of the year, Balky, and I can't believe we're this close to the kickoff on Sunday.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a fun game. Should be a fun game, at least. We'll get into who you should be betting on, which props you should be betting on, as the prognosticator will drop by. Alex Kaganovsky, FFPC co-founder, is going to tell you what ones he likes this weekend. Franco Vendome talks about 2021 FFPC drafts, as well as how he almost got to the very top of the main event. He had to settle for 9th place this past year. We're going to talk a little bit about how he did that with him. And a former guest of the show, multi-time guest on the show, Jimmy Wagner, is going to talk about his new creation, Draft Dogs, and the Kickstarter campaign that you need to check out and make sure this becomes a reality for all of us. Shout out to the chat room right now. You can post any questions you might have in there. You can connect with us on Twitter at HSFFHour. I am at Eric Balkman. Remember to check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com as well. You can find Alex on Twitter at Alex_FFPC, and Jimmy is on Twitter at Triple J's Report. That's Triple JS Report. You can also email the show, highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com, facebook.com/HSFFHour, and if you want to give us a call tonight, 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OVER. Get those questions to us now. We'll do our best to get through them throughout the show tonight when we have Alex, Franco, and Jimmy come on. And don't forget that our producer and mutual friend, Rob, as well as my best friend and our audio engineer, Bryce, will be working very hard to make sure those are answered before we sign off this evening. A couple of things I want to point out before we get to the start of the show. 2021 best ball drafts are indeed open right now at myffpc.com. Plenty of super flex, double ups. Everything is going on there right now, starting at $35 on up, $77, $250. There's a price point and there's a format for you at myffpc.com. You want to play year round, Dynasty Orphans are available. Check it out, myffpc.com/Dynasty for sale. And don't forget to be registering for Prize Picks ahead of the big game on Sunday. PrizePicks.com. Use the code FFPC. You invest $20 into that, you'll get a free $35 FFPC credit. Plus, you'll get the instant matching deposit. So essentially, your $20 will turn into $75 value very quick. It is simply a can't miss for any FFPC player. Lance Turvis, the sports betting man, he was on this week's Heist Lowdown. You can check that out, rotoviz.com/podcast. He was in the first FFPC draft of the year to complete the first FFPC best ball of the year, and he had a lot of stuff to say on who he took at the 104, which surprised a lot of people, and how many rookies he took in that draft as well. A lot of great stuff in there, rotoviz.com/podcast. All right, let's get into tonight's first guest, ladies and gentlemen. He is the co-founder of the FFPC, but we know him as the prognosticator. He's here to share his favorite Super Bowl 55 props. You follow him on Twitter at Alex_FFPC. Please welcome back into the show the prognosticator himself, Alex Kaganowski. Good evening, sir, and happy Super Bowl weekend, man.
Good evening. How are you? Farrell says that he can't believe Super Bowl is here, and I can't believe that the high-stakes fantasy football hour is here where I'm on it.
You make a very compelling guest. Why aren't you on it more often, Alex?
Oh, no, you don't want to hear too much of me, Farrell.
Everyone wants to hear too much of you. Full disclosure to everyone that's listening for the show, and Balky, you especially, I sent a text in to see if I could get what would be the equivalent of insider information to find out what the favorite props were. And I got a very, very cold shoulder. Essentially said, I have no favorites. And so everyone who's getting this information and is tuned in tonight is getting it in a timely way. There's no insider information, and that just adds once again, Alex, to your sterling reputation as being fair and balanced with all fantasy players. So congratulations on that, sir.
Thank you, Farrell. He's not lying. That actually did happen.
Well, now we're not lie, Alex.
We should now. This is and people who have been a long time listener to the show, they know that Alex. This is not your first appearance on the show. But one thing I think is always important to bring up when we talk about betting, just props in general, not necessarily Super Bowl props, something you bring to our attention every year. It's almost as important as not only what side you like, but the kind of odds that you're getting from whatever sports book you're betting. Can you kind of refresh us on why that's important as people look to make their Super Bowl prop bets this weekend?
Yeah, that is to me, it's the single most important thing. And now, if you live in states like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, I believe, and a few others, there's quite a bit now. You have access to probably dozens of legal sports books. Now, you also have offshore if you want to go that route, and if you trust them, then you have that too. But when you have that much access, you also have, especially when it comes to props and Super Bowl props, you have the ability to find value, and you could find value in the line, you could find value in the juice, or the juice being your way. The direction that you want to play. So I think to me, that is the single most important thing, and I will bet just because of the value and because of the, not necessarily the side that I like, but just the value of the side. If I have the ability to find it.
All right, so
Alex, for years. Go ahead, Paul.
No, Farrell, go ahead, please.
Alex, for years, I've either been at the Super Bowl 3 years, go to Super Bowl week to do some work, but usually, and for the last 14 years, you could find me in Las Vegas on Super Bowl weekend. And you are so right, because one of the most frustrating things that I ever had is by the time I got there and got my hands on a prop sheet, locals and people that had arrived earlier in Las Vegas had already picked the props and already moved the numbers on the values of the plus and the underdogs and the favorites for the betting of the props. So here in Indiana, where we have our KFFSC draft at Caesars, I was able to go over and grab a prop sheet. And I've had it with me for the last 2 weeks. And I finally found some that later on I'm going to, in the show that I'm going to ask you about. But you were spot on. getting that prop sheet early meant all the difference in the world.
And I will add, Farrell, that's actually true. But as the lines move, as you get closer to the Super Bowl, for example, Sunday morning, sometimes an hour, or Sunday afternoon, a couple of hours and even an hour or a half hour before the Super Bowl, you're going to see the biggest moves of all. And a lot of times when you first grab that prop sheet or you first open that website and you see a line, I mean, you may have a significant move. If it's a total on the yards, you could have 2 or 3 or maybe even 5-yard move between, let's say a few days or a few weeks leading into the Super Bowl and an hour before. Or the juice could go, anywhere between 20 and 60 cents. So you could actually end up being on the other side of a particular prop just simply for the value. And I love that. Like, I'll actually look for certain lines that I think will move, and a lot of times they move to the over. So, like, if you're an over bettor, you should probably take the early action, the early lines. If you are an under bettor, you should probably wait until closer to game time.
So, Alex, first of all, great knowledge on what to do before you get there. But once you see the value, once you know which ones you want to go, once you have picked a side and you understand, okay, this is the one I really like, just give us a few of your favorites so far that you've seen for Super Bowl 55 between the Chiefs and the Bucs.
Oh, the one I right away thought about was, and then as it turns out today, I was listening to fantasy radio show on Sirius, and it turns out everyone's loving it too, which always makes me, I have to second guess myself when everyone is on the same side as me. I don't like that. So, but I feel good about it because I actually got in early, and that's over on Mahomes rushing yards. I got in at 19.5 over, lay 30 cents, which, by the way, that's kind of usually the maximum that I'm going to lay, 30, 35. I don't really like to lay too much more. But I've seen that line move to over 19.5, lay 70. I've seen in some books online that line is up to 21.5, also laying like 25, 30 cents on the over. And the reason why I like that line is really because I think, besides the fact that I think Mahomes probably is healthier, much healthier than he was a few weeks ago with the bad toe, I just think that with the offensive line, he's going to have to move around. The Tampa Bay pass rush is going to force him to do that. And I just don't think he's going to be able to sit around and kind of roll, especially rolling to his left and to his right that he typically does, and then hits Hill downfield. I think he's going to have to, is going to have to scramble and maybe make a few rushes up the middle.
That makes sense.
That was one of my favorite ones too, Alex.
And the thing is, like, I don't think have we gotten final word on what linemen are going to be out there and what linemen are not going to be yet? Because I think if we get some sort of Super Bowl surprise that Kansas City is indeed missing 3 starting offensive linemen against that Tampa defensive line, man, that looks really, really good. So you guys are definitely dialed in on that one for sure. Alex, what about do you have any others that you want to? I know you want the HSFFR audience moving the number or the odds on this at all, which is quite frankly not only possible but very likely. But what other ones are you willing to share with the audience tonight?
I'll give you one that I found. Sometimes you just find a strange one that you doesn't seem to make sense to me, and this one it falls into that category. So it's Edwards Hilaire, total yards rushing and receiving, which in my book it's set at 60.5. Now, you think about it, it's like, okay, whatever, 60.5. You can go over, you can go under. But here's what I found it to be strange. The total on his rushing yards is 33.5, I believe. The total on his receiving yards is I believe 18.5. You combine those two, and you get 52, 53, something like that. But yet the total prop on both rushing and receiving is 60.5. So that is very odd, and I don't see it too often. And it's not always exactly lined up, with those two rushing props and the receiving props, but it's usually close. It's usually within 1 or 2 yards. It's 7 yards difference. So I happen to have it on my book. I'm not exactly sure if it's on every book the same, but I took the under pretty quickly when I saw the under 60.5.
And this
Alex,
is the type of advice you get tonight.
Alex, if you look at a sheet, like I've been doing for 2 weeks, you finally see things that you don't think you ever would have paid attention to. And I found one. I want your opinion on it. I guess it would be categorized as team prop, and there's 2 of them. And it's just something that I've never picked as a prop before, but it looks like it's a clear answer. But I want to ask you guys a question first. I know you've watched the Kansas City Chiefs play football all year. Can you tell me the name of the Chiefs punter? It's impossible.
No, I cannot.
Tommy Townsend is the Chiefs punter, and I had to look it up. I didn't know either. And I've got a prop here. Tampa is minus 140. Which team punts the ball more? Who punts the ball more? And I don't ever see Kansas City very, very rarely punting. I think that is I think that's an easy bet on Tampa Bay. What do you think?
I can't say that I disagree with you, but from my perspective, again, I'm more of a kind of a value player, and a lot of times I don't really handicap by. I mean, obviously, I think about the flow of the game and how I think the game will go, but I don't necessarily, in this particular case, it seems like that would be the only thing that would drive this bet is just the flow of the game. And to me, since I can't really put a value on that bet, on that prop, I don't really know what the right number is one way or the other. With just, kind of the algorithmic, like what is, I just don't know what is the good value either way. So I guess my answer is I don't know what to make of it, but it seems to make sense.
I have one other question to ask you, and they're both receivers on Kansas City. Can you live with the big numbers? Would you be an overbetter, or is under where you want to be on Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill? Travis Kelce, I believe, is 8.5, and Tyreek Hill, I think, is 7.5.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I have an under bet on both of those. Actually, on my book, I can get under 8.5 Kelce receptions plus 20 cents. So there's a lot of action on the over on that. Again, just a pure value play. I think that because of, again, in this particular case, I think about maybe the flow of the game, and I think, again, back to the offensive line troubles of Kansas City. I'm thinking, maybe Mahomes will not be as comfortable, and I'm thinking, where is he going to go when he's not comfortable? Is he going to go to Kelce? Sure. I mean, he could always go to Kelce, but I'm thinking of broken plays or things of that nature, or, when plays break down, when protection breaks down, I'm thinking what happens? Well, he goes to his third, kind of fourth reads, not necessarily the number one read, or maybe dumps off to the running back, or maybe takes off. So to me, it's very possible. Also, I think another thing to keep in mind is that he's playing a real defense. Yes, I know he kind of embarrassed the quote unquote real defense back in the middle of the season when they played, but I think this defense is playing pretty well right now. So, and he hasn't played a real defense certainly in the last 2 games. I mean, Cleveland was just an embarrassment, and Buffalo did not really put up too much of a fight either, as far as defending against the top 2 targets. So yeah, so I like the under. I like the under on Kelce. I like the under on Tyreek Hill. Again, just try to wait and get the value and try to maybe get a +20 or a +10 or whatever, or maybe the line even moves half a reception to the next number.
Well, I got to be honest with you. Our listeners always get +1,000,000 every time the prognosticator comes on, and it's always good to talk to you, Alex, my friend. This is the highlight of my Super Bowl weekend is getting the props in from you. And remember, if you want to bet on fantasy props with a fantasy spin, prizepicks.com, use that FFPC code. Make sure you're getting in on that and transferring a minimum of $20 into at least $75. Thanks to the FFPC credit, thanks to the instant match bonus at prizepicks.com. We follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_FFPC. Alex, keep crushing it, doing everything you do for the FFPC, and we will talk to you again soon, dude. Enjoy the game on Sunday.
All right, guys. Nice talking to you again.
Thank you. Thank you,
absolutely. Alex Kaganowski, ladies and gentlemen, the prognosticator. Always good to talk to him. As excited as I was to hear those props, so I know which way I'm leaning towards going on Sunday, what I'm rooting for. I am even more excited to welcome in our next guest here this evening, ladies and gentlemen. He is a full-time chef and a part-time high-stakes fantasy football player, but he's trying to become a part-time chef and a full-time high-stakes fantasy football player. He's on the right path, clearly, after he finished 9th place overall in the 2,000-plus team competition that was the 2020 FFPC main event. Want to welcome in tonight's second guest. It is Franco Vendome. Franco, welcome into the show, man.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a real pleasure. How are you tonight?
We're doing good. We're excited for the big game, as I'm sure you are too, Franco. We do want to get into fantasy football, pick your brain on not only how you built the juggernaut that really went on an incredible tear in Week 16, but it did all season. We're going to get into 2021 before we do that. Can you tell the listeners where you're practicing your chef expertise?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a chef restaurant owner here in New York City, and I'm involved in a few locations right now. I have one in Midtown Manhattan, one in Astoria, Queens, and we are currently working on our third project in Long Island, which will be open in a few months.
You are fighting the good fight, Franco, my friend. I tell you, back-to-back New Yorkers on the show, Balky.
And we might get Farrell. I'm going to be honest with you. We might get a third before the end of the show too.
That's great, and I love that. And I'm trying to get through the pandemic and focusing on all the positives. And we've had some wonderful, wonderful positive things brought to us through fantasy football and the NFL this year. But Franco, I miss my trips to New York so badly. I'm so glad to see and congratulate you on your expansion during this time of the year when all we hear is a lot of hand-wringing and bad news coming from New York. So congratulations not only on your fantasy prowess, but your business prowess as well. You know, for a New Yorker, your 2020 team, it came to Cleveland to rely on some of its pop. I remember when I showed up in Las Vegas to draft my teams live, the Kareem Hunt was draped all over and created a pall of discontent for Nick Chubb drafters. You went ahead and were one of the earlier drafters on Chubb, the middle of the second round, I believe it. At 2-6. Why did you have the foreshadowing to realize that Chubb could do so much with only 190 carries? On the season, Hunt actually got more carries. Chubb, 12 touchdowns, 6+ 100-yard games. He could have done more with more, but he certainly made the most of his opportunity, as you did in 2020. You and Chubb are going forward together in the future, I take it. Would you make that move again?
Yeah, I was bullish on Chubb coming into the year, and I'm not going to sit here with a straight face and say it was an easy pick to make. There was definitely some hesitation there, especially with a lot of my peers in the high stakes fantasy community being so high on Kareem Hunt, as you mentioned. I think what helped me a lot is being a Vikings fan, and my affinity for Stefanski and what he did with the offense, especially in 2019.
Right.
I saw what he got out of Cook in that backfield, and I believe they averaged, if I'm not mistaken, over 150 yards per game in 2019 on the ground. My hope was that Chubb would get somewhere between 15 to 20 carries a game and also vulture all the goal line carries. I actually thought about drafting both of them on one of my teams, but I thought that was a little negative EV move, but would have actually worked out because Hunt also paid back nicely on his 5th-round ADP. But I think it was just Stefanski and what he can do with the offense, his scheme, his ability to run the ball. And another guy that really helped me is one of my favorite prognosticators in the fantasy community is Matt Waldman over at Football Guys.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many breakdowns and articles I read from him on Chubb, and just pointing out his overall talent, his vision, his all the breakdowns he did on him. Waldman really helped me in that aspect, and kind of watching those videos and his rookie scouting portfolio that he does every year kind of pushed me over the ledge, and had quite a few shares of Chubb this year.
I got to say too, I just feel like you could say this about pretty much any running back in the NFL, but if you told me, Balky, what running back in the NFL was born to play professional running back, it'd be Nick Chubb to me. Just the vision, the cuts, the body, everything he does, He checks all the boxes for sure. Franco, I do want to ask you about the 5th-round pick that you had in this team that finished 9th overall, and that's Ronald Jones. And I know I've touched on this before on the show, but it seems like ever since Tampa drafted Ronald Jones, they've seemingly been looking to replace him. They get guys like Peyton Barber, Keyshawn Vaughn, Leonard Fournette is the flavor du jour this year. But I'm just kind of curious, do you think that this is a guy that's going to be chronically undervalued essentially or his whole career because people will always be pointing to that second running back in Tampa that the Buccaneers seem to be hell-bent on bringing in every single year to complement Jones?
I think so, Eric. I think there's a good case to be made for him being undervalued. If the chips fall the right place for him in this upcoming season. And to go back when I drafted Rojo last year, I think a day or two later they signed Fournette, and I was just beside myself. I was like, oh no, what did I do here? Because it was a very very divisive topic in the fantasy community. Either you were a Rojo truther or you weren't. There was kind of no in between gray area, and everyone was having a ball with it after they signed Fournette. And as I'm sure you noticed, Fournette was shooting up draft boards as we got closer to opening kickoff. But I do think, if he can take the next step as a pass catcher, I do think he needs to work on his receiving ability out of the backfield. He did work on the fumbling this year a little bit, and I think earned a little bit more of Arians' trust, which is a big thing with him. Obviously, we've seen him numerous times yank a running back after a fumble, and they'll never see the field the rest of the game. I do think that if he can really take the next step as a pass catcher out of the backfield, I believe some early data I saw so far for next year's season for upcoming drafts, he's going somewhere around 70 in that range. I do think he has some upside there if he can take the next step. And also if Fournette, I'm assuming Fournette will go out there and look for a big payday from another team. He will have to ward off Keyshawn Vaughn, but I think if he can stay in Arians' good graces, he does have some upside there in that pick range.
Franco, Balky, in the midst of the Big Ten, consistently loves to talk about running backs from the Southeastern Conference. And as I said here in Kentucky, Balky, in Wisconsin, we give him full right to do that. Every running back we're talking about here tonight appears to have played in the Southeastern Conference, with the exception of Rojo. But as much as I love talking about running backs, I want to move on. I want to talk about wide receivers because I need some help. I'm drafting right now in one of the Draft Master best ball events, and I'm I got my early start in January. I wanted to say I was drafting in January, so there I go. And what I've noticed is bunched closely together is my stellar 9th-round draft pick last year of CeeDee Lamb. And now, bunched closely together, Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb are appearing in the draft together now. How great it was when CeeDee Lamb was with Dak Prescott. He a couple of touchdowns, and through the first 4 games was already at 20 receptions. Here in Kentucky, we're required to start 3 wide receivers in your lineup, and when I go to the FFPC, I draft too many wide receivers at the expense of running backs, and I'm always scrambling with running backs, and I say I won't do it, and I always do it, But this is the year. I want you to tell me if we should do it with these 2 players. If Lamb is going too high, I mean, maybe I have this in common with other fantasy players. Maybe I have it in common with Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones gives $20 million a year to Cooper and invests a first-round draft pick in Lamb. And the Cowboys are in 11 personnel 70% of the time, and they got a running back previous to this year that succeeded in 11 personnel carrying the ball. So I want you to tell me, am I right to draft CeeDee Lamb as close as Amari Cooper? Both these guys are going to catch 100 balls, 92 for Cooper last year, 74 for Lamb. What are you doing with these guys?
This is a tough one, and I do think in the FFPC format that I wouldn't be surprised to see Lamb creep up a little bit more as we get going deeper into draft season a few months from now. Everyone's always looking for the flashy new toy, and these are shark-infested drafting waters, obviously. You saw it last year where Miles Sanders became the hot commodity, and he was going. I think he went 1 in one draft that I saw, but he was going regularly. He was being drafted 4 or 5 over guys like Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, or even the aforementioned Nick Chubb. We see it happen often, but it's a fine line for me to toe with these 2. I do think both of their ceilings are capped quite a bit due to many reasons you just mentioned. There's just so many mouths to feed in that offense. With a healthy Prescott back, in this type of format, I tend to lean a little bit towards Lamb's upside a bit over Cooper, and I think that will reflect in drafts as we go along here. Another thing I'd like to see Dallas do is involve him a little bit more in the running game, a few more end-arounds and trick plays. They did that. Actually, I think they did that week 16, which helped me with a late touchdown he had there, a late rushing touchdown. I think he has great potential in the running game. We saw it at Oklahoma. I hope Dallas can involve him a little bit more in that aspect. I think that gives him a little slightly higher ceiling than Cooper, but honestly, they're both kind of capped, I believe, because of the offense that they play in and the amount of weapons there, the amount of mouths to feed, as I said.
I can tell everybody, too, that currently, and by the way, shout out to Darren Armani, who runs FantasyMojo.com, who puts this ADP together all year long. CeeDee Lamb currently going as wide receiver 19 at the 502. Amari Cooper, wide receiver 15 at the 406. Yeah. So, again, about a half round of value. And I should mention this, too. Franco got Ronald Jones in the 5th round last year. People, I think, are agreeing with you, Franco, here with the FFPC drafters. Ronald Jones falling to the 608 as running back 26. Either they think Fournette's going to be back or they think Tampa's going to add somebody else or Keyshawn Vaughn's going to take a big step forward. So maybe Ronald Jones even more of a value this year. That remains to be seen. We're talking with Franco Vendome, the 9th place team owner in the FFPC main event here in the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour this week. I know I've been talking about this guy a lot, but I think it's an important guy to get right for FFPC tight end premium drafts in 2021. A lot of undecideds going on in Washington right now, especially on the offensive side of the football. How high would you draft this year, Franco, a tight end you took in the 16th round of this main event last year, and that's Logan Thomas?
And here's another guy who hey, there's no easy decisions, as we all know, right? There's a lot of these are head scratchers, and Logan Thomas, the guy continues to improve every year. It's just such an abysmal offense, and so many unknowns, as you mentioned, Eric. Who's the quarterback going to be? Are they going to add any outside weapons, any other weapons in the receiving game to help F1 and to help whoever is the quarterback, whoever is on the center? As it stands currently, I'm having a little bit of a hard time drafting him in that seventh round range. I believe I've seen him about going around tight end 10 overall.
Correct.
While I was so bullish on him last year, like you mentioned, I was able to nab him in between the 16th and 18th rounds, and I absolutely loved him at that price. But at number 10 overall, me personally right now, it might be a little too rich for my blood. I think I'd rather wait a bit and, for the likes of Jonu Smith or Irv Smith, or even a guy like Big Rob, Tanyan and Green Bay. I'd prefer waiting around the 2 and nabbing some of those guys. And there are a few sleepers I like later on as well. But he is a polarizing guy. I remember him as a quarterback at Virginia Tech, and he's a very skilled player. His athleticism is off the charts. I might come around a little bit more once I see what Washington does in the off season. But as of now, I have a hard time paying the premium of tight end number 10 for him as we speak.
Guys, Washington's not the only team that a fractured situation at quarterback. As we look around the league, there's so much quarterback shuffling that I think, Franco, you've got that exactly right. You've got a real good idea here in Super Bowl week what to do with that player, but there's a lot of stories to be told with these wide receivers. I really like that player. So let's focus again on running backs. There's a great situation developing for another Southeastern Conference player. Balky points out to me that Deandre Smith will now be coached by a former Southeastern Conference player and Deuce Staley. All these SEC running backs. Deandre Swift underutilized last year. Only 114 carries, 46 catches out of the backfield. With his 114 carries, he got 8 touchdowns. And this is just a terrific, explosive player. And I am so bullish on this player. And this, I don't believe that we'll have another player in the draft that will move as quickly through the draft and as high. And Balky, I would love you to give us some of the Fantasy Mojo ADPs on Swift. But is DeAndre Swift a player that you are going to target? Are you as bullish on him as I am with what he might be able to do with 200 catches and a new quarterback? 200 carries and a new quarterback.
Yep. Absolutely, Farrell. I'm bullish on Swift. It's there's always a leap of faith with drafting a Detroit running back, as we all know. But I mean, with Deuce Staley there, Anthony Lynn as the offensive coordinator, we've seen how he has utilized Eckler the past couple years. And then you bring in a head coach that, he wants to really instill that blue-collar, hard-nosed football, and apparently he believes in cannibalism as well, right? He wants to rip off the other team's kneecaps or whatever.
A lot of psychological questions with Detroit's new head coach there, but I think it bodes well for their running game defense.
Absolutely, although I don't know how much worse it can be from the previous era of and Patricia and the coaches they had there. But, you everything's lining up for Swift. And as I mentioned for Ronald Jones before, where he needs to work on his pass-catching ability, one of the things I love about Swift is his prowess as a receiver out of the backfield. He's a great pass catcher. They should be playing in a lot of game scripts, behind in many game scripts this year. And me personally, I can see him racking up those 7, 8, 9 catch games where they're playing from behind and he's just catching little dump-offs in garbage time. Besides his pedigree, and obviously he's an amazing talent. I think, early third round, I'm all over him. Second round, I'm really considering him, depending who else is on the board at that time. Obviously, I'd like to see what happens with Galladay and Marvin Jones as well. Seems like Marvin has one foot out the door already. But I'd like to see Goff will probably obviously be more of a game manager than Stafford was. But not much competition in the backfield. Kerryon is still there. They might bring AP back for a one-year deal. Who knows? But he's the guy in this backfield, and he was so underutilized last year that you'd have to think the new coaching staff will know right away who's going to be the bell cow in this offense, and the whole offense should run through him, especially with Goff there now, who's, known as more of a game manager as opposed to Stafford, who was, flinging the ball all over the field out of necessity most of the time because they were down. But I really like him. I'm willing to use a second-round pick on him. If he's there early third, I'm all over him this year.
Just real quick on Farrell had asked,
Sure.
Deandre Swift, ADP right now, 208 as running back 11. So he's being drafted as a starting running back right now. Gone as high as the 201, gone as late as the 304. That is the span on Swift. We've been talking a lot of Super Bowl in the chat room tonight. Jimmy Wagner in there, Kern Reeve, who was last week's guest. We have a question for you, Franco, from him coming up in just a little bit. Dave Gerzak in there as well, the former host of this show. You are on the Super Bowl episode, Franco. Tell us how you see the game going, and I'd love to get a final score prediction from you as well between the Bucs and the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, what an intriguing matchup, right? There's so many storylines leading up to this Sunday with who many people consider the GOAT, rightfully so. Tom Terrific, and all his work ethic, the film studies, you name it, the determination. I was reading a story about Giselle and how her and the kids have left him alone now, and he's been alone for the past 2 weeks and just all by himself in isolation, watching film and prepping for the big game. And then you have obviously Mahomes and his amazing football acumen, and for such a young player, probably, I guess, the most gifted, physicality-wise and talent-wise, the most gifted quarterback I've seen come around in a very long time. So there's so many storylines. I think in the trenches is where this, not to sound cliche, but in the trenches is where this game is going to be won. And I hate to say it, but I think Tampa Bay is a little stronger on both sides of the ball right now. When it comes to defensive and offensive line. I know Kansas City obviously has Fisher out. Their offensive line is a little banged up. I really think that's going to play a big factor in this game on Sunday. And also how Brady handles the blitz. Spaniolo obviously caused Brady some headaches last time they met in the Super Bowl when he was the Giants defensive coordinator. Him against the blitz has been well documented. His numbers aren't spectacular at all. I think that's going to be a big key to the game. I do anticipate it's going to be, I think, one of those wild games, a close game where Brady either leads them on a late touchdown march, or I can also see, something, a tipped interception or a fumble, something with Kansas City driving late and they wind up turning it over. I think somehow Tampa Bay is going to find a way to pull it out. I'm thinking 31-24 or 28-27 were the two scores I had in mind. But I think it's going to be a wild finish and some kind of crazy play that we'll remember for a long time, a la the Patriots-Seahawks Super Bowl ending a few years back with the interception in the end zone. I just have I don't know. Obviously, I'm probably totally wrong. And after saying this, the Chiefs will probably go out and win 41-7. But I just foresee some kind of wild ending here. I think it really is going to be one for the ages. It's going to be a memorable Super Bowl, in my opinion.
Well, that's the beauty. That's the beauty of this game. You cannot. You gave a very compelling reason why Tampa Bay should compete and could win in this game, but you cannot buy into it, because as soon as you make that statement, you then look at the other side and say it could easily go the other way. You could flip it around, and that's what makes this game. This is what makes this game so great. You know, when you draft players in the FFPC, I know there's always a player, and listening to the way you handle the draft and how prepared you are, I know there's more players than just Chubb last year who you were focused on that really delivered for you, and I'd like to hear one of those. But I also know that you are human, and, you know, I know there's a guy out there that you swung and missed on, and that will make all the guys like me feel a little more in common with you when you tell us a guy that you prepared for last year, that you had big thoughts for and big hopes for, and he really let you down. And I'd like to know if you're going to hold a grudge against that guy in 2021 and not even consider drafting him. So if you've got a couple guys like that, let's hear them, Franco.
Yeah, as far as players, I think I was that I quote unquote nailed. Chubb we spoke about already. I think Adam Thielen, most drafts I scooped him up in the 4th round. I think he was going a little overlooked. He was, definitely a plant the flag guy for me in a lot of my rosters. And, Rojo we touched upon already. I think Logan Thomas, where I was able to get him in the 16th to 18th round in a few drafts, obviously also really reaped, really paid off dividends for me. And then obviously Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. I was lucky enough to have them on the roster that finished in 9th place. They really propelled me those last few weeks of the season. But yeah, those are some of the guys. Even Brady, I had a lot of. I was mostly Allen and Brady on most of my rosters, and for where I was getting Brady, and I believe in one draft I got him in the 13th round, but I was regularly getting him in the 11th and 12th round. He really was a guy that I think was also being overlooked quite a bit for many reasons: change of venue, new team, his age, obviously, and questions of if he still had it or not. So Brady, I felt like was really being overlooked. But those are some of the guys that I think I was right on. But there were quite a few that I was wrong on. That's for damn sure. The biggest probably being James Conner. James Conner.
You and me both, my friend. You and me both.
Draft capital for James Conner.
Yes.
You had to pay for James Conner.
Absolutely. I was regularly taking him in the 3rd round. I might have reached and taken him late 2nd in one draft. And he had a few decent games, as I believe, Eric, you just said you as well. You had him as well, I believe. Yep. On some rosters.
Absolutely. Yep.
So he showed some signs in the beginning of the year, but then, it was all downhill from there pretty much. He was a guy that I was terribly wrong on, and he has left a bitter taste in my mouth. I try not to have too much recency bias when looking into the following season, but he's a guy that might be, depending where he falls, it might be a little difficult for me to pull the trigger on him this upcoming season. And a couple guys later on, DJ Moore, Marquise Brown, those guys, I swung and missed on them for the most part. And I really had a lot of some younger players that I was high on. Joshua Kelly on the Chargers, LaVisca Chenault. I had those two, and also Zach Moss. I had those 3 on a lot of rosters, and I pretty much missed on all 3. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. I was lucky enough to get some of those other guys right, and they carried me to a decent season, thankfully.
Well, I like those young players, and I wouldn't hold a grudge against any of those 3 that you mentioned at the end.
Yeah, Paris Campbell was another
Farrell,
one.
I'm with you guys on this. Like, if I'm going to be wrong, let me be wrong with the younger guys and not necessarily the older guys with limited upside. So I think, you mentioned it, the Mosses of the world, the Kellys of the world, the Paris Campbells of the world, Franco, for sure. I think those are guys worth missing on. I don't want to miss on this. We do have time for one question from the chat room. It comes from actually one of last week's guests. It's Hudson Kern-Reed, Pros vs. Joe's champ from 2020. He wants to know, and I'm going to make this a 2-part question based on what Dave Gerzak said after it, but he wants to know, Franco, do you think Antonio Brown, if he is indeed active for the Super Bowl, Do you think he exceeds expectations, has a big Super Bowl 55? And secondly, the Dizzle pointing out, Antonio Brown's looked all right with Tampa this year, had a couple of pretty good games, and now he's a free agent, no suspensions. What do you think happens to him in 2021? And I'll let you go ahead and answer those, both those questions.
As far as the Super Bowl goes, he seems to be on track to play. He practiced on Friday. He seems to be trending in the right direction. I don't know necessarily if he'll exceed expectations. I can see him having a typical Antonio Brown game as far as what he's done the second half of this season with Tampa Bay, where, he can come in at 4 or 5 receptions, maybe 50 to 65 yards in that range, maybe pay off and hit the end zone once. I don't see much more than that. I do think Tampa is going to run the ball a little bit more than we anticipate, and hopefully the thunderstorms hold off that they're talking about or don't impact the game too much. But, again, with Evans being such a big red zone target, and then obviously Brait and Gronk, and we can't forget about Chris Godwin. Again, there's just they have so many weapons that I can see him putting up a middle of the pack type game, but I don't expect anything huge from him come Super Bowl Sunday. And to answer your question, as far as next year, I'm very curious to see where. Have you seen, Eric, where he's going early on in drafts? I haven't. To be honest with you, haven't had the chance to look at his current ADP.
I will look that up and tell you in a second, for sure.
It depends on where he lands, and if he can stay out of trouble. Obviously, I'm confident that he'll be able to stay out of trouble, and hopefully he's learned his lesson with all the off-field shenanigans. He can still get it done. We've seen it the past few weeks prior to this past injury. But I think a lot has to do, obviously, on the organization, the quarterback, the scheme that he lands with. It's very interesting to see. I'm so curious to see what happens with Antonio and where he winds up this upcoming season.
A New York restaurant owner, Balky, would know everything there is to know about shenanigans. So that's understandable. You can identify those for us.
Real quick, Farrell, the Dizzle is actually reporting from the chat room. ADP for Antonio Brown is at 152. That's Michael Gallup, Jamison Crowder, and Jalen Waddle territory. That's where Brown is going right now. I'm going to look that up here real quick as far as what receiver he's being drafted as. That is wide receiver 47 right now. 47 is where Brown is going in the 11th round.
I mean, depending on what team he lines up with, I think we'll see that climb up quite a bit. There's potential for his ADP to climb quite a bit. I think, and in my opinion, I'm not sure if you two agree with me or not, but I think there's potential for him to shoot up the ADP boards quite a bit, depending on where he lands. People believe in Antonio Brown. I mean, you saw even in FFPC this year, he was constantly being drafted, and I think every league I was in, someone was taking a flyer on him. Some drafters even as early as 15th round or so were selecting him.
Right.
So I do think we'll see him shoot up those draft boards quite a bit. I would be interested in that at that ADP. I will say that much.
You're very good. You're very good at identifying players that have slipped in the draft that you can make points out of. And we talked a lot about players that would be that people might be reaching for. So I'd like to stay with this theme and ask you just to give me one player in addition to Brown, somebody like Logan Thomas, somebody that you feel that when you return to the FFPC Live, and I really look forward to meeting you when you do, and I'll take this opportunity to invite you to join us in Kentucky and play, and where you can draft all the wide receivers you want. But can you tell me?
And that has drafts in it. And Farrell, by the way, that has, don't sell yourself short, has drafts going on right now too as well.
Oh,
there
awesome.
You go. So give me a guy that you think has slipped now and will continue just to stay there and be a bargain, and that you will ride to more championships in 2021.
I think the guy who's catching my eye, there's a few of them, but if I had to narrow it down to just one, I do think it might be Antonio Brown after what we just discussed, but I do think Mooney. I do think Darryl Mooney on the Bears. He was.
Yeah.
I think he's going around the 150 range or so, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure what's going to happen with Allen Robinson in the offseason. There could be quite a few more targets there to go around, and there are rumors about Carson Wentz also being traded there, which may be a fresh change of scenery, gives him some new life, pumps some fresh blood into him. I do think Mooney at 150 has potential to really be able to win someone's draft with his upside and potential that he brings to the table. He's definitely one of the guys. Thank you. Definitely one of the guys I'm circling early on. And I think another guy people are forgetting about a little bit is Jerry Judy. I think he did have a lot of growing pains, a lot of drops his rookie season. But for a guy who was going, somewhere between the seventh, I saw him go as early as 7th round this past season. He was regularly going in the 8th and early 9th round. Now you can get him around the 2 after that. I think he experienced some rookie growing pains there. But and I think a lot of people were bullish on the Broncos offense coming into the season as a fantasy sleeper offense. They did obviously have the injuries to Sutton, and Lindsey was banged up for a good part of the year as well, among some other injuries that occurred. But I do think Judy is being overlooked a little bit early on from these early ADP reports I'm looking at as well.
I can tell you right now, fellas, that when you look at Jerry Judy in drafts, wide receiver 41 at the 908. This is Brandon Cooks, Robbie Anderson, Devontae Parker, Laviska Shenault territory. So that's where Judy is going right now. Represents a pretty interesting buying opportunity, not only for redraft, maybe for dynasty as well. This was a very interesting opportunity for us to not only talk to the 9th place finisher in the FFPC main event tonight, but one of the most illustrious, decorated chefs of the East Coast, Franco Vendome. So good to have you on the show tonight. Do you want to? We do have a lot of New York listeners. Do you want to sell them on why they need to be hopping aboard and dining in any one of your 3 establishments, Franco?
Yeah, they're all quite different. The restaurant in the city, in Manhattan, I should say, is Nino's 46, which actually had the pleasure of meeting your wonderful colleague there, Chris Lambert. She's such a wonderful lady.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's the best. She dined there a few times, and she was so sweet. It was so nice to meet her. That's kind of like, as my friends would say, that's the original, the OG spot, as we say here in New York. That was started by my parents way back in the early 80s. And just good quality contemporary Italian food, homemade pastas, and wood-burning oven pizzas. Whereas the new project we're doing is totally on the water and going to be called Nino's Beach. So it'll have much more of a beachy, summery vibe. Definitely shucking a lot of raw oysters and tons of seafood on the menu. So it's contemporary Italian with a little bit of a twist, but it's something that's been in my family for many, many generations. And being a first-generation Italian American, it's just been in my blood. With the big Sunday family dinners that are 7 courses, and you need to unbuckle the belt a little bit before you can finish. It's just I grew up around that, so it's been in my blood forever. But hopefully I can get a little more established as the years go on and focus a little bit more on the high stakes fantasy football. That would be the goal, as I mentioned.
Well, it's clear fantasy football is also in your blood, Franco. Congratulations on a great 2020. Best of luck to you in 2021, and thanks for making some time out for the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. We'll talk again soon, and enjoy drafting season this summer, dude.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you guys having me on. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you guys enjoy the big game on Sunday.
Can't wait for it. Can't wait. Franco Vendome, ladies and gentlemen, the chef on the East. And by the way, Dave Dizzle's been talking about Nino's in the Astoria, Queens location, NinoAQ.com. You can check out, they got a gallery up there, full menu. It's fantastic for anybody who's listening in New York. Maybe like our next guest, who I want to bring on right away. Don't delay. Our final guest tonight is a former Main Event Football Guys Best Ball League champ, but he's here to tell you about his brand new Kickstarter campaign for a cartoon he created, produced, and wrote called Draft Dogs. You can follow him on Twitter at Triple J's Report. You can check out Draft Dogs on Twitter at Draft Dogs. Please welcome back onto the show. It is Draft Dogs creator Jimmy Wagner. Jimmy, thanks for coming back on, man. Appreciate it.
What's up, Eric? What's up, Farrell? Thanks for having me. Thanks for putting the Draft Dogs out there.
Oh, well, you're the one who put it out there, man. We're just talking about it. I got a chance to watch it. I was thoroughly entertained, and we'll get into the comparison of what this show reminded me of, and I think sort of your inspiration, or at least one of your inspirations for creating it. But how did you sort of come up with this idea and decide that you wanted to move forward with something like this? Was it simply a passion project? Was it something you had in the hopper for a while? Tell us the evolution of this.
Yeah, it was just something that's been in the hopper for a while. This whole COVID thing's been crazy, as you guys were discussing before. I feel bad for your boy Franco, like with all the restaurants closing. It sounds like he's pretty upbeat, what they're doing up here in New York.
Ninth place in the main event will help you be a little bit more positive than maybe
he
would be without that.
Very true. 16 years I was with the same law firm, and then when COVID happened, we ended up parting ways, and I found myself with a lot more free time than I normally have. So beyond the time I just spent in fantasy football, I finally got to work on this project that, like I said, I've been sitting there, been wanting to do it, and I just wrote it out, and it went.
Balky's getting all around it, Jimmy. But what is your inspiration? What did you grow up with and watch that resonated with you that would make you turn to something like this and bring it to fruition, your baby, so to speak? Because I see a lot of cool things, and I didn't get to look enough. And I want to return to the fundraising pages for what you're doing here. But one of the things that immediately hit me is what a great way to deliver some of the nuance and backstories and develop characters around fantasy football, when so many of the few shows that have dealt with it, I think, have failed miserably. And I think your creation here is just can take it to another level and be very entertaining to the public.
Thanks, Farrell. Well, I'm gonna tell you, you referenced multiple shows. The only fantasy football show that I've ever watched was The League. I mean, It hasn't been around in a while, but when it was on, I watched it religiously. It was hilarious. Like I thought they did a good job.
You did. You liked that show. Okay.
Yeah,
good.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, The League.
Well, I was a big
The League.
fan
They had like what? It was only like a 6-person league. They had a 6-person.
I'm here.
Keep going, Jimmy. We got you.
Oh no,
we got you.
Sorry, I thought I lost you guys. Because I'm in the house. But so I watched The League and everything. And that's always been in the back of my mind. But when you're looking at Draft Dogs, every one of those characters is a real person from my actual hometown league.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, that's us. Like, like obviously the exaggerations, and there's if you know the people in the league and you look at the cartoon, you can recognize them. If you don't know them, you wouldn't know. But like Dr. Dino, real person. So I don't recall if you remember, Balky, when we talked about my boy Nemo in the past, the fisherman.
Yeah.
Like, him and his brother are two real dudes. There aren't many fishermen left in the world. Well, at least I should say.
Right.
But they're real guys. Chuck, like when you look at that big redheaded dude, Chucky, he's real, man.
Yeah.
Like he really exists. And every single one of them's a real person in my league.
Jimmy, which character are you then? Out of everybody in Draft Dogs, which one are you?
I'm Jimmy Warner. I'm the lawyer, Jimmy Warner.
So you're the lawyer. Obviously, you're the lawyer. Okay, so I was.
There you
first
go,
two
Bucky.
No. Listen, my first two guesses were going to either be the redheaded convenience store guy, because I would imagine that you would take fantasy football more serious than any of your local league mates. And then my second guess was the commissioner, who obviously takes everything super seriously as well. But you're the lawyer. That makes perfect sense.
Right. No, listen, the commissioner of my real league, his nickname is Scatty. Like, that's Scatty, 100%. Chuck, the convenience store dude, that's him.
Mm-hmm. That's good stuff, man. That is good stuff. And you know what the other great thing about this, and this is the problem I always had with the league, not that I had a lot of problems with the league, but you only got, like, it was like a 10-team league, which, you know, that's fine. You know, some of us still play in 10-team leagues. But, like, you only got really into 5 or 6 of the characters in the league, and the other ones, they dedicate an episode here or there. But with this one, the way you've laid out, we'll call it the pilot, you know, what you have on the Kickstarter, you get a taste of every single one of these 12 league members. There was no short shrift done to any of these characters, which I really appreciate. And, you know, the other thing, too, is one of the things that you were able to avoid, and I don't know if this is purposely or just, you know, by happenstance, but in a pandemic, it's very difficult to get actors together. It's very difficult for people to block out scenes and shoot stuff. Cartoons would be the easiest way to do it. And I hesitate, and I know you call it an adult cartoon, and there is some, you know, mature humor in there, but this is the easiest way to get something like this out there. And I even before, you know, you had said it's fashioned after the league or whatever, even if you wouldn't have said that, I picked up on certain things in this that, like, oh my God, this is something the league did. This is something that maybe they didn't do as well as I thought they could. And maybe you have the potential to do it even better than them.
Knock on wood, I hope so. I don't know. I think with doing it as an animation, like you said, it just gives you a lot more freedom. It's a little, I don't know. No, I feel like you can do things and say things in a cartoon that you possibly couldn't do or say with real life actors.
Well, yeah, you don't have to direct your cartoon. You develop your characters here, and you direct your characters as real life actors. And I what I thought about it, guys, that you know, and I was not a fan of the league. It never set with me.
Really?
And maybe and maybe I just missed. And I don't see that. What I missed there, I did. My first impression was this is so much different. Because these characters, which I take are all New Yorkers, or at least all East Coast guys that you're representing here. See, we've got guys like this that play in Kentucky. And I said, this reminds me of this guy. Oh, this. So already I was identifying with this. And in most cases, some of your characters reminded me of multiple guys that we have down here. Because, we got a 200-300 person league, whatever it is. But however we got here, I love it, and I can't wait to dig back into it.
So, Jimmy, let me ask you this, too. For anybody, first of all, I posted the link in the chat. We'll tweet out the link to the Kickstarter, too, at HSFFO, or I'll try to do it with my account as well and get that out there so everybody can check it out. And you can watch the full, it's like roughly 18 minutes or so for the first episode. Very entertaining stuff all the way through. For anybody who wants to support this, obviously go to the Kickstarter, but there's different benefits at different levels to support this as well, including maybe even being featured in the show potentially down the road.
The levels you think of are pretty standard. Like, a $10 donation will get you in the credits. $100, I can build you right into the show. For the grand, if you actually wanted to be in the league. So when people talk about money is like a real funny thing, right? And it's all relative to how much you have. So I've played fantasy football with like the New York Mets, and I've sat there and I've watched guys drop $50,000 to play seriously. And And look,
Yeah, no, I believe you.
I don't have that type of money to be dropping $50,000, but I've seen people do it. That being said, so the ultimate backing for this Draft Dogs project is I've spoken to all my league members, and we've been together for 12, 13 years now, and we all agreed if, someone wanted to drop $10,000, we'd invite them into our league. They'd get to come to the draft. They'd get to be in next season's Draft Dogs, and they'd meet a whole bunch of new friends. It's,
It could happen.
It was hard coming up. It was hard coming up with an amount for that, but that was the number we came up with.
I like it. I think people, if it's 20 minutes to watch this, check it out. It's definitely worth your while. It gives you, and I said this earlier too. It's very topical. There's stuff about there's some Black Lives Matter stuff in there. There's pandemic stuff in there. It's very, very recent, very topical stuff, which I think everybody appreciates in their when they're consuming media right now too. So if the easiest way, until I put the link out there, just search Draft Dogs Kickstarter. It's going to be the first link that you come up on Google. You can donate there. You can see the different levels to get this thing going, get it off the ground, and hopefully we could see more of this in the future. You follow Draft Dogs on Twitter. You follow Triple J's Report on Twitter. All the updates will be posted there as well. We'll try to keep you abreast of all of it. And, Jimmy, I want to, before I let you go and enjoy your Super Bowl weekend, I know you're a hardcore Jets fan, and I did want to bring this up. So Brady is in the Super Bowl with the Buccaneers. You say you no longer have a problem with Brady anymore? You're done hating on him?
I'm done hating on Brady. I'm going to be honest. It was the game against the last playoff game against the Packers. Did you guys watch the very end after he won? Did you watch what he did at the end of the game with his son? Tom Brady walks up to the sideline and asks the security guard permission to speak to his son. And it wasn't rehearsed or anything, and I thought that just showed Brady showed so much respect for somebody who just had to sit through an NFL playoff game with his back to the game. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And Brady, you could hear it in his voice. He definitely respected that person and said, hey, listen, can my son come down so I can, talk to him? Yeah. And the security guard's like, Tom Brady's asking me permission? And he let him down. I don't know. It put Tom Brady in a new light for me. And now that he's not a Patriot, he's a good guy.
But so I'm going to say this right now. So I'm obviously a big Packers fan. I was devastated. It was one of the hardest losses I've ever took as a Packers fan when I saw Tom Brady and the Bucs come into Lambeau in January and beat the Packers to go to the Super Bowl and send the Packers packing. Now, I think I'm going to be pulling for the Buccaneers this weekend, and I like rooting for greatness. And to me, Tom Brady just oozes greatness. I would love to see him win a 7th Super Bowl, even after what he did to Green Bay. And and I heard this today, and I totally agree with this take. I think a lot of people hate Tom Brady because they hate when he wins what you have to deal with in sports media with columnists and journalists and analysts fawning all over his achievements. And I think that's a big reason why people hate Brady, because of having to deal with all this extra nonsense in sports media afterwards, saying how great he is, and they got to put up with it again until we start fighting for the Super Bowl. I think that has a lot to do with it. It doesn't affect me. Go Tom Brady, go Buccaneers. I hope they win.
Yeah, I agree, man. Look, what I have, 17 years of getting beat by Tom Brady. You know what I mean? It's a long time, bro. but no, I do. I hope that, good luck to him. I hope he wins. It really showed, I'm sorry that your Packers lost, Bulky.
Yeah, whatever. It's death, taxes, and the Packers losing in the NFC Championship. I'm over it. It's okay with me. Jimmy, I am excited for Draft Dogs. I hope everybody else is too. We'll get that stuff tweeted out, and I hope that that Kickstarter works out for you. Thank you so much for making some time on Super Bowl weekend. Enjoy the game on Sunday. We'll follow Draft Dogs on Twitter. We'll follow you at Triple J's Report on Twitter, and certainly we'll follow this Kickstarter as well. Thanks again, man. We'll talk to you again.
Thanks a lot,
soon,
guys.
Dude.
Thank you. Talk to you later.
Jimmy
the
Wagner,
New York
ladies and gentlemen.
crew, Balky.
Oh, it's a triple threat tonight.
What a great evening that was.
What I wish the Super Bowl was in New York, so we would have really hit on being topical tonight. But It's in Tampa. We'll see what happens. Farrell, I didn't get your prediction on the game. I think you like the Chiefs to get it done, though.
I have liked the Chiefs since last year's Super Bowl, Balky, and I have tickets to prove it. And at the FFPC, I made my bets on the Kansas City Chiefs then. And this game, as I said earlier, it could go either way, and you would understand, and you watch it, and you'll say, I see how that happened, and these are some great players competing against each other. The one thing about the offensive line, everyone's talking about that, that these are capable backups. The Kansas City Chiefs are a well put together team. They lost their one of their best offensive linemen, who chose to stay and practice medicine in Canada, in Ottawa. So they're a deep, well-run organization. Quickly, the difference is that Mahomes, when moved out of the pocket, can throw with accuracy as if he is dropping back in the pocket. He gets the same he gets the same motion, the same velocity, the same accuracy on the ball when moving that other players and other quarterbacks have to get, like Tom Brady, have to remain in the pocket. I rewatched your Packers, and I suppose the sympathy cards to you, and you haven't complained about it, but everybody knows how much it hurts you.
No sympathy.
You haven't complained about it. Everybody knows how much that hurts you. But I rewatched that game, and a few things could have gone very differently. Your Packers would be playing in this game. So I think that I think we're going to have a Kansas City win, and you ask for a score. If you're asking me for a score, I'm coming in with 38-28, and a very volatile offensive game, but we'll see at the very end that Tampa could not keep pace. And one turnover, a couple of extra punts, a couple of situations where you give the ball to Mahomes, it'll just be too much for a very good defense, but it'll be too much.
Oftentimes for my local radio show here in Northeast Wisconsin, for big football games, I will ask my 7-year-old son and my 5-year-old daughter who they like in the big game, and I've got Super Bowl predictions from them. My 5-year-old daughter says Kansas City 38, Tampa 35, but she says Chris Godwin wins the MVP. So a little bit out of left field. Might not be the worst thing to bet this weekend. Chris Godwin getting the MVP in a losing effort. Farrell, always a pleasure. Enjoy the Super Bowl on Sunday, dude. We will talk to you again next Friday. Can't thank you enough for doing the show tonight, man. It was a juggernaut of a program.
Thank you, Balky.
We'll see you soon, man. Farrell Elliott, check him out. KFFSC.com. Remember, drafts are open there right now. I might hop in one, actually. There's a couple of them popping up. I think if you check out, there's one coming up this Monday, and there's I don't want to speak for Farrell, but it could be live streamed on Facebook. You can check that out, KFFSC.com. They're not the only ones. Remember, go to myffpc.com. We have best ball drafts, super flexes, best ball slims, double ups going on there right now, starting at $35 on up. You can hop in those. They fill as soon as they're full, essentially. And you can get in on the drafting action here in February prior to the 2020 season being over. I want to thank all of our guests. Oh, my goodness, what a cavalcade of great people we had on tonight. The prognosticator, Alex Kaganowski. Franco Vendome, the ninth place team in the FFPC main event. Of course, Jimmy Wagner. Check out Draft Dogs on Kickstarter, at Draft Dogs on Twitter, at Triple J's Report on Twitter as well. Farrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob, Bryce, and of course, each and every one of you as well. Don't forget, rotoviz.com/podcast. Lance Turbis, this week's guest. Long, free-flowing conversation with him, as they usually are with Lance, about the first FFPC best ball draft for 2021 that got in the books. That was an awesome conversation. You check that out there. Next Friday, we will be back, 10/9 Central. 2020 Football Guys fourth place finisher Jason Hockenberry will join the program. He will talk about how he came so close to that $500,000 grand prize in the Football Guys Players Championship. That will be very exciting to have him on as well. As I said, myffpc.com is your spot not only for best ball leagues, Dynasty Orphans, myffpc.com/dynasty for sale. Tons of deals there. And don't forget about bidding on them at dynastydepot.com. I invite you to get a membership there to take advantage of all the benefits of that. PrizePicks.com. Sign up with code FFPC, and you can have a lot of fantasy prop action for the Super Bowl on Sunday. Hey, that's it for this week's show. Enjoy your Super Bowl weekend because it starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and heard around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Thank you so much for listening tonight. Everybody want to thank Frederick the Younger, who took care of our outro music tonight. Check out their music, fredericktheyounger.com. And, of course, quiethollers.com is where to find the Quiet Hollers, who were in charge of our intro music this past week. Prize Picks, code FFPC, myffpc.com, kffsc.com. There is literally no excuse for you not playing fantasy football or fantasy prop action this weekend. Thanks so much for listening to this supersized episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. We will be back next week. Thanks so much, everybody. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Go Bucs.